What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lowered Expectations. Thanks for lowering your expectations and hanging out with me here. I do appreciate it. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of a story. Last year around this time, I decided I wanted some firewood for my fire pit so we could all sit around singing Kumbaya. And so I weighed my options, looked around a little bit, and came across what I thought was a deal, $650 for a half a cord of wood delivered. Then this year came around, July of 2025, and we started getting low on wood. And after looking at Vevor and seeing that they had a chainsaw at a bargain basement price, I decided that we were going to get a permit, take a trailer, drive out into the woods, and collect our own wood. Although I have been talking about removing the tree from my front yard for probably about 15 years, ever since I moved into the house, it was never my plan to take the tree down when I bought the Vevor chainsaw. It was supposed to be a saw that I would use to go and collect firewood, but since I had the saw and I had some time, I decided to take the tree down myself. In the past, I've had quotes for tree removal for this tree, and it was anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. We'll talk a little bit more about the total cost of me removing the tree from my front yard, but I will say that the Vevor chainsaw paid for itself as soon as I went and collected the firewood because, yeah, it was a whole heck of a lot less than $650. I think it's really important to point out that I am not a professional lumberjack or arborist, and this is a very dangerous process. You can go on the internet and watch all sorts of disasters of people trying to remove trees and getting seriously injured or damaging property or both. So if you're going to decide to do this, it is your responsibility to make sure you're doing it safely. Again, I'm not a professional. A lot of the stuff that you're going to see in this video was not a good idea. This saw is not the proper saw for climbing up a tree and removing limbs. You can get a proper saw for doing that, but I wasn't about to buy a second saw for doing something that I'm probably only ever going to do this one time. A lot of the stuff that you see me doing cuts by my face, and yeah, a lot of that was not safe, admittedly, and I don't recommend that you do the same. All right, folks, I got me a Vevor chainsaw. I've used it to collect firewood, but today I am going to start taking down this monstrosity. I've wanted to do it for a lot of years. It drops a lot of pine cones and needles and wrecks my yard, and also keeps smashing up against my house and filling my gutter. So today I'm starting the process of cutting it down. I'm going to remove all the branches and make a giant pile, and then I'm going to climb up on the little pieces that are sticking out, and I'm going to take the top off. Well, I don't know how far in I am, but I've got at least some of it done. The real sketchy part's going to be up there. I should probably get a safety harness. It is a windy day. Probably not the smartest thing to do this today. Probably not the best day to be doing this. She's a little windy. It's not as big of a pile as I thought it would be, but there's still a lot up there. Oh yeah. All right, folks, I've gone through one tank of fuel. I'm using this stuff because I have it. I'm also using a harness that I used for climbing years ago. I haven't done much climbing, but this is what I have. Just this thing. I've got a carabiner on the end of it, wrapping it around branches. Anyway, it's I've tested it out. I actually let myself drop a little bit and it caught me, so it feels a little bit better. It is kind of windy up there today, and I'm not sure if it stays this windy. I might not do the whole thing today, but I'm going to continue on. Now I got to carry a can of fuel up there. It's real hard to get the camera to pick up how high this is, but behind me there you can see rooftops. Yeah, I don't know how high I am, but I'm way up. I think I showed you guys already, but I do have carabiner and some rock climbing gear. I'm tying myself off every time I go up a little bit. I tested the harness to make sure that when I fall, I won't fall. But anyway, things are going pretty well. Where did I put my glove? In my pocket. Okay. Tree pruning in windy weather. I am quite a ways up. I probably should have set up a time-lapse camera or something. Anyway, it's going fairly well. But yeah, if this wind keeps up, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep going. It is also getting dark. We've got some sunlight left. But the sun is setting, but when you're way up there, you've got a bit of daylight left. I think I'm getting pretty close to the point where I could chop the tops off, but it feels pretty sketchy up there. I don't know how high it is, but it's high enough that I'm looking down on other tall trees. I stopped to check out the Vevor chainsaw, and it has been working absolutely flawlessly. I was going to tighten up the chain and noticed that there's a nut missing. That's my fault. I obviously didn't tighten it enough. I've tightened up the chain. The bar has been holding, so I'm going to finish the job with one nut. It's burnt through about 2.5 tanks of fuel, 2 tanks maybe. And I've used maybe half a thing of bar oil. It's keeping the bar lubricated, so I know it's not just that the pump's not working or anything. But anyway, I'm running out of daylight, and I'm thinking I might bring the tops of the tree down, so I'm kind of in a bit of a rush now. It's going to take me a while to climb back up the tree because I got to carry the saw with me, so. I'm interrupting the video here to shamelessly promote this Vevor chainsaw. I did purchase the chainsaw with my own money, but I'm affiliated with Vevor. I was able to get an affiliate link, which means if you purchase one of these chainsaws using that link, I get a small kickback. The chainsaw hasn't actually been fired up in a few weeks now, just because of the way video editing works. The saw hasn't been running in quite some time, and for your pleasure, I'm going to attempt to start it for the first time since I took the tree down. I'll put that information down here. It is currently this date, and I took the tree down on this date. So anyway, the saw doesn't have a primer. It just has a switch. It is now turned on. I've got the choke fully pulled out. What I usually do with chainsaws, weed whackers, leaf blowers, all that stuff, pull it over about 5 times without expecting it to start with the choke on fully, then turn the choke off, hold the throttle wide open, and give it a few more pulls. So we're gonna see if that method works for me here. It might start before that. 1, 2, 3. That was 4. I'm gonna turn the choke off and hold the throttle open. All right, there you have it. 5 pulls. I would highly recommend using some sort of canned fuel. In this video, you're seeing me use the VP Racing fuel. It's a premix fuel. I don't represent that company in any way. I use the fuel for my business, but you can get True Fuel, Aspen, Steel stuff. Unless you're using a lot of fuel, I recommend using this stuff because the 2 things that kill saws most frequently is improper oil to fuel ratio, either too much or too little. And the second thing is simply having the fuel varnish inside of the fuel system and destroying the carburetor. Anyway, once again, if you're interested in the chainsaw, link in the description below. I ended up running out of daylight, as you guys can see. Still a little bit happening up there, so I'm gonna have to climb up tomorrow and top it. Right now, I was cutting some of this stuff up to put it in a fire, but I don't want to be running the chainsaw. It is about 6:30 or 6:45. So legally I could continue, but I don't want to annoy people too much. I think I will grab the hatchet maybe and pull some limbs off, or yeah, trim some of this stuff up, and then yeah, make a bunch of smoke tonight, burning up some of the stuff. Using on the ground ran out of memory. As you guys can see, got a terrific mess here. Took down a bunch of pieces successfully. These are all very heavy chunks of wood. Kept them all basically on my property, so that's nice. Just ran out of fuel and probably low on bar oil as well, and I could do with a good chain sharpening. Sun's about to go down. I'm kind of thinking about cutting it off at the ground. And yeah, I don't know. These pieces are starting to get hard to deal with. Editing video can be quite difficult, not just because it's time consuming and sometimes quite frustrating, but also because not everyone wants to see the same thing. So the next part of this video is basically 7 minutes of relatively unedited footage where I am taking down the last part of the tree. I know some people just want to see the last part where the tree just falls to the ground, but I know that a lot of people would be upset if I basically sped this footage up. And so if you want to see the tree just falling, jump ahead about 7 minutes and you'll see that. for a beginner. I honestly didn't think my cut was going to be that good, but yeah, not bad, not bad. I got a lot of cutting to do. That poor Vevor chainsaw is going to get a lot of work. I didn't film any of the cleanup work. I didn't film renting the trailer. I actually thought of it at the time, and quite honestly, I was just exhausted from a week of work. I just spent the morning mowing up some debris and raking, and yeah, most of the debris and wood we piled into a trailer, hauled some off to the dump, and then some off to Andy's work. He works at a compost facility. And yeah, the stuff that we're keeping isn't by choice. It's basically because we ran out of time and I needed to bring the trailer back. It would be nice to have the space to keep the wood and then use it as firewood instead of buying firewood. But quite honestly, we need the space more than we need the wood. And it's going to take probably a couple of years for this stuff to dry out. So let's go take a look at the front yard and see what we're left with. I managed not to ruin my property, my house, any vehicles, or hurt myself during this whole process, so that's a bonus as well. This is what the tree looks like now, or a black oak tree. Anyway, I still have a bunch of cleanup to do. This is what's left behind. This is a 24-inch stump at the narrowest spot. Probably gonna burn most of this stuff now, and it's just gonna sit here for a while. All right, folks, it is actually a little while later, and I was able to burn up a bunch of stuff, actually surprisingly quickly. It only took me about a week to completely clean up the front yard. I shouldn't say completely because there still is a stump and a bit of a pile of stuff, but let's go take one last look at the front yard, and then I'll do my outro. I'm sure you guys care. That is a pretty huge difference. You got all those big chunks of wood carted around to the back and burnt up, and even most of the branches and pine cones and stuff. There still is a pretty decent pile of crud piled around the backside, but yeah, pretty pleased with the way the cleanup went. It's kind of ridiculous. The stump looks small until you have some sort of point of reference. Yeah, 24 inches across at the smallest point. And I just want to point out, that's a pretty good cut. I'm pretty proud of that. I've got to say that it was at least somewhat a fluke, because I'm not a professional and I haven't taken down a lot of trees. But I'm pretty happy with the way this went, and I did save a lot of money. If you guys have any ideas what I could do with this tree stump, I'm thinking I could remove it, or I could turn it into a planter or something. What do you think? There you have it, folks. The Vevor chainsaw has definitely paid for itself. I have to say that this job was extremely exhausting. I'm not a young man anymore, and this saw is not a light saw. If you're doing stuff where you're not going to be cutting fairly large trees, then I would suggest maybe getting one with a shorter bar. But I'm definitely not disappointed that I got this one. Of course, once you buy the saw, you can buy a shorter bar and shorter chain. And I did look into doing that for collecting firewood, but decided not to, because a bar and a chain was basically going to be about half the price of the chainsaw. Again, if you guys are interested in this, there is a link in the description below, an affiliate link, where if you use that link, I get a small kickback. That would be greatly appreciated if you're in the market for a saw. I wouldn't recommend this, of course, if you're a professional taking down trees. However, if this saw lasted you one job, then it's basically paid for itself. One downside to buying a saw like this, whether it's Vevor or other off brands, is that you're probably not going to be able to get parts for it. Almost no chainsaws, unless you're buying a professional grade chainsaw, or if you're doing all the repairs yourself, they're basically not repairable anyway, or not economical to repair. If you buy a leaf blower, chainsaw, weed whacker, whatever. If this saw ever breaks, I will just be getting a new one. If the chain breaks or the bar breaks, I'll get a new chain or bar. But if the engine seizes up or a bearing seizes or something like that, if the handle breaks on it, I'm just going to be getting a new saw. So that is something important to keep in mind. If you have a steel chainsaw or a Husqvarna or something like that, you're probably going to be able to go out in 5 years and buy a new handle, a new trigger, a new carburetor, a new piston, a new crankshaft, whatever. Whether that is worth it to you or not, that is up to you, but that is a thing for sure. I mentioned earlier in this video that I got quotes for removing this tree. They were anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 to have professionals come and do it, and it would have been done in about a day. This took me about a week to do, to kind of cut the tree down and haul away all of the debris. So you need to take that into account. And there's also the risk of damaging property or ruining yourself so that you're not able to work ever again in the future. That being said, I was able to complete this task in a week for about $450. That includes the price of the saw, the price of the fuel, the trailer rental, and the dump fees. So I think it was worth it for me. I don't know if it's worth it for you, but I now have a saw that I can collect firewood with, and yeah, I am extremely impressed with this saw. I've been doing a bunch of work on my bus, getting ready for an RV trip, if you want to call it that. Some of those plans have changed, but the bus needed a bunch of work done to it, and so I'm continuing on. I don't know what my next video will be. I do have a couple of Vevor heaters, actually 3 Vevor heaters that I want to test. All of them purchased with my own money, just to make things a little bit more simple, and so that I'm not bound to any timeline. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in a saw, link in the description below. If you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, also a link in the description below. I will see you next time.